introduce Leo because many of you might not know him, and it's slightly embarrassing for Leo to tell you all how brilliant he is, whereas I'm quite happy telling you that he's brilliant. And we really are very, very excited about LGO securing him on board, because this is the start of a really exciting business now. There are one or two other members of the company here on the board. You may already know them already, or you can catch them later, so there's plenty of people who can talk to you afterwards as well if you want. Do please use my reception room, have another cup of coffee and a chocolate biscuit. But let me just quickly introduce Leo. As well as being much taller than me, he's also Dutch, so this is a good case of European cooperation, which is some people are very happy to have. But actually, he is a big fish in the oil industry. He might not be known in the equity markets, but he has done some remarkable things in the oil industry. And if you Google him, you will find there's a lot of information out there that will tell you a lot of very exciting things. He spent 13 years at Shell, which is probably where he learnt this trade, a very good learning ground, but is best known for what he did at TAQA, which is the Abu Dhabi National Energy Company, where he was actually sort of sent to Aberdeen, as far as I can gather, and sat in an attic on a box with a mate and said, let's build $1 billion business. And he did. And he called it his Big Bird project, so I think this project must be your Concorde project or something, another level up. But I mean, what I like most about when I met Leo is not only is he clearly an extraordinarily talented person, but he really likes what he sees in this business. He is very, very excited about it. And I believe, and this is only my belief, that he hasn't come here just to run a business, but he's come here to make this a $1 billion company. And if he does that, you're all going to be, or all the investors are going to be exceptionally wealthy. And in my view, and I say it quite openly, I think this will be a 10-bagger straight off, because that's what it should be. But I think after that, there is still plenty more upside. But on that note, I hope that gives you a good introduction, Leo.
Wow.
Over to you.
The expectation. Thank you very much, Andrew. The running order, I brought a couple of slides. So, and after we've run through the slides, then you can ask your questions, and we'll be as open as we can be. What I'd like to talk to is, who am I? Why am I interested in this business? What's next? And how are we going to do things? What is the culture we're going to be creating around this business? First slide, building an oil production-led South American exploration business. I think that is new for LGO, future to be Columbus. I believe that within this business, you've got a core asset, the good Trinidad asset, which can generate free cash flow. From that key free cash flow, you can then do exceptional thing in exploration. You can then build a nice exploration portfolio, get that properly funded, and then get the money multiples Andrew was talking about. But more about that later. So, the other way. So who am I? Other than tall, Dutch, and 54 years old. This is a piece of my career which I'm immensely proud of. This is TAQA Botani. Abu Dhabi National Energy Company asked me to set up a business in the UK. They were interested in growing their mature expertise to be able to import that into Abu Dhabi when the time comes and they need to be operating mature assets. So for them it was, we want to build a $2 billion business. Here you go. And this is the team we started with. So we started with 6 people initially. By, I think this was week 2, we already were at 9. Very humble beginnings. Modest. No one knew us in the industry. No one believed we could achieve what we were set out to achieve. And taking on the Shell mature assets, 4 big platforms, producing 20,000 barrels at the time, with a team this small, no one believed it was possible. So 5 years later, after we have established the business as a capable operator in the UK, a capable production operator, so because in the UK it's very regulated, so you need to go through all the steps, you need to get all your DECC approvals, there's a lot of stuff you need to get to, and you won't get through that unless you've got the in-house capabilities and core expertise. So, so after 5 years, we had built up the business to 60,000 barrels a day, and the revenue generated in that year was $1.5 billion. So a material business. And we did that with all the stakeholders aligned. So we grew our employee base from 6 to 500 in the space of 3 months, effectively. We had our shareholders, we had the whole service community around us helping us to achieve this. And on my last day, I knew I was going to go to Iraq to try and do the same thing in Iraq. People helped me back in my office. They stalled me, and I got a sense something was going on. I'm taking a bit of a risk here because I hope this is going to be interpreted the right way, because I've got a lot to lose, and I'll show you why. So people, all stakeholders, thought it was important enough to line the stairs in Tata House, the building we owned in Aberdeen, and to give me a very emotional speech. And so it was not only employees, it was stakeholders, shareholders, representatives from Abu Dhabi were there, the contracting community, and even some government officials, some local officials. And that's my lovely wife, and she was in on it. She never told me anything. And she's gonna kill me for running with this now. So that's my commitment to this business as well. I'm committed to achieve exactly the same thing for now LGO, in the future Columbus. So why am I interested? Why particularly in LGO? So what are the elements which intrigue me? Old and unloved. I think the fields, Neil tells me that they started producing already in 1956 or something, 58, a long, long time ago. So you would think, well, what's left? And this bottle of oil intrigues me. So this is the crude produced from the Gudrun field. And normally what you would expect from shallow reservoirs, because this is 300 to 500 meters, maybe going on to 1,000 meters, you would expect those crudes to be very heavy, thick, and a lot of H2S in them. This, you can maybe pass it around, this is very light crude, nearly diesel-like, and you can run it in your diesel engine. That tells me that somewhere down there is a much bigger pool of oil which is slowly seeping to surface, and we're only seeing the ends and light ends of this. So the prospectivity in this area is enormous in my mind. The fact that it produces gives us this solid base of cash flow, and then, well, the world's our oyster. This is a local steel band, and old and unloved, but as you probably all know, these steel drums, they started off as old oil drums. And these guys, they managed to make something great out of them. So with that spirit and that attitude, that positive energy, I believe we can develop this field into a material producing field. The critical element is that we all need to do it together. So from what I've seen is that Columbus, I'll keep referring to Columbus now, is they had a very bad spell. They had, after 2014, the oil price collapsed. They were unlucky with a well. Some of the wells didn't perform as well as they hoped. So So they had a lot of trouble. But throughout that period, they were able to maintain the relationships with local government, which is absolutely critical in our ability to turn around the field and make sure that we get the maximum value from this field. So our reputation in country is maintained, and therefore we've got a robust basis to grow the business. Stronger together doesn't mean that the management and the board needs to work together. We also need to work together with our shareholder and our shareholder base. We need to communicate well, and we need to get a positive spin around the whole stock. Everyone needs to be enthusiastic and excited about what's going to happen, because I am. So what's next? We are already making some changes. Stuart Ahmed, he's one of the most experienced, mature reservoir production management executives I know. Stuart is going to go to Trinidad on the 16th, I think.
Next week.
And what we're doing is we're making a whole log of the opportunities and ways to spend capital and build our production. Historically, the focus has been on wells, but looking at this for a month now, there are opportunities around pump optimization. There are opportunities around water injection. There is deep water injection, shallow water injection. There is new deep wells, new shallow wells. There is the whole bolt acquisition where there's a whole field ready to be revived. So just in the first 2 weeks, we already came up with a list of 15 opportunities. And so now it is up to Stuart to make sure that these opportunities are matured, ranked, to the point where we can make very good decisions on where we're going to get our maximum bang for our buck. So we're going back to basics. We're going to do some proper petroleum engineering work, and then based on that work, we're then going to be spending the money we still have in our coffers in the right and appropriate way. So first, take stock, look at the opportunities, come up with a plan of how we can best deploy our capital, and that's then the first part of our 3-year strategy. I believe this is the start of a 3-year journey, where in year 1 we're going to be building up our production, and we're going to be crystallizing our exploration opportunities, and then year 2 and 3 we're going to be building up the value within the business. So again, very excited to be part of this. This talks to the transformational growth and opportunities. This just gives you a view and a picture of how large the block really is. It is a material block. We've got exploration acreage in the Southwest Peninsula, which could yield material reserves. And what I really like about this opportunity is that once we've built up that core skill of a low-cost oil land-based operation, why limit yourself to Trinidad? We'll be venturing into the rest of South America, because that is a continent which is vastly unexplored and will yield opportunity for us. You'll remember there's other companies doing a similar thing, maybe more focused on gas. We take the low-cost land-based oil operations and we take it to the region. How are we going to do this? This is very close. This is very important to me, because this is how I'm going to be leading the business. Safe and sustainable. We are an oil industry. Inherently, there is always risk associated with oil industry. So to maintain our reputation, we need to operate safely. In this environment, where everything is old, difficult, a lot of regulation, legislation, you need to be hugely creative, and you need to be the best at being creative. So that's something which we're going to really crystallize in our business. Personally responsible. I'm responsible for the result of the business. My team will be responsible for delivering their parts of the business. But it's going to be very clear who has got what responsibility. Nothing works if people can't trust you. That works in all areas. So That is a core underlying value which I believe is very important. Stronger together and positive energy, I like them to take them under one banner. And the stronger together, I believe we all should work as one team. The Columbus management, the Columbus board, our shareholder base, we can generate a real positive vibe around this stock and make a difference. So, Columbus Energy Resources PLC, creating a legacy to be proud of. Questions? Be gentle, this is my first webcast.
Over there.
Hi, welcome on board. Hopefully you can do at least part of what you've promised.
Yeah.
If not, I'm sure we'll be back here to remind you of that. But
Positive energy.
Yeah, of course. Do you expect you're going to have to need to raise capital anytime soon?
That's very good. I'm glad you asked it because I missed it in the presentation. The management team and I are aligned and incentivized to make sure that any further capital requirement is accretive for the share price rather than a dilution to what we've seen in the past. There's a good explanation why it had to be dilutive for the last year, because there was this 60 million debt burden. That's gone now, that's behind us now. So we can look to the future where, as I said, any cash raising will be accretive to the business.
Okay, thank you.
It's probably worth you mentioning just quickly about you've actually done drilling. You started off, so you understand the fundamentals about the operations as well. You know, in your career at Shell, so it's not just running a business from the top. You've actually done it right from the bottom. Yeah,
my career history, like I said, I started with Shell, 13 years with Shell, and I've worked the rigs. I've been assistant driller, didn't make it to driller altogether because that was just too hard. But I've been pushing pipe and I know how that works and how it feels to be in that environment. Even better, I am a working interest holder in a small stripper well in Montana. So I've got personal interest in making sure that works properly. And so I understand what's necessary, but Stuart really knows what's necessary. Maybe you can give us a little hint on what opportunities you'll be pursuing, just the top 4 or 5?
Yeah, I think building on what the previous management have done. If you look at what the previous management have achieved in taking a 30 barrel a day field to 300-400 barrels a day through cleaning out wells, reactivations, and then moving on to infill programs. By necessity, the business was based upon sequential processes. We're now in a position where we can actually do parallel opportunities. So instead of just thinking about infill drilling, we can be thinking about infill drilling with water flooding, as well as pump optimizations, so that we can actually have a portfolio of bang for buck. Where do we spend our money on a day-to-day basis that's actually going to give us a sustainable business? So we can do all of those simultaneously now, whereas that wasn't necessarily always open to in the last 4 or 5 years. It was a sequential series of operations. So I think we've learned a great deal along the way about where is the oil, and oil is everywhere in Gudrun and in the other licenses. There's no question that this area has any risks with respect to the oil being there. It's all about, can we improve upon the poor recovery factors of the Texacos and the Petrotrins of the past? And I think the answer is we have the will to do it and the focus to do it, and we have the experience to do it. So initially it will be about building production from the existing base, but also looking at where the risk bang for buck is going to be. And in that 3-year time frame, I think we need to regain some momentum and actually want to hit the ground running. We've actually got a process going for a submission for a waterflood pilot. I think that can be something that we focus on very, very quickly and fast follow that with a bang for buck portfolio.
Good. Thanks, Stuart.
Stuart, are you an expert in water flood?
In my 32 years, I started off in the North Sea water floods, Stanfield, Dunlin, and in my...
So, how much do you think it's going to cost? We've targeted, I believe, something like £1 million to start with from the previous placings. I'm not absolutely sure how much of that money was going to be used for water flood. Can you expand on how much it's going to cost immediately and over the development period?
Well, that's good.
I mean, the scale of that type of figure is appropriate for some well interventions to make them fit for purpose for water flooding, for example, putting packers into injection wells, and the surface facilities, the pumps and the water treatment that allow you to put quality water in the ground. So that sort of scale for an initial pilot is a reasonable type of figure.
And what sort of, so that's the £1 million is required for that sort of operation, is it?
For an initial water flood pilot, it's of that sort of scale.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Ideally, we fund that through free cash flow.
Good. Good.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm Jim O'Donnell. I believe in positive vibe, so I think it's a good message, but sometimes surprises can be good or not so good. So can you just give us a bit of history about how this, your position and your recruitment and so on, how long that's been planned? Because it was a bit of a surprise, and I'm interpreting it as a good surprise so far, but maybe you can give us a bit of a history in the last few months, if that's possible. And then just, you mentioned when you were showing us the video, you going down the stairs, that you were off to Iraq. Could you just say a little about that and the years you were there, anything you'd care to share with us? Thanks.
Good. I think our first conversation around me becoming part of Columbus was early April, end of March. So throughout the conversation, I've been able to do my due diligence, make sure the value of the underlying assets, and already get a feel for what should be next in our program. So although this is day one for me on payroll, I've now had at least a month of really understanding what's going on. And you learn quickly if you've seen a lot of operations all over the world. 28 years of being involved in oil industries. Within the first week you already have a hunch that's where it's going. And then the next week you already start articulating a strategy. Bring in the right people, and then you move on. So fast, I believe, is good in this case. So that's your question number one. Question number two, that was a hugely exciting project, Iraq. TAQA just had done the acquisition for the Atrush field, which was close to 1 billion barrel resources. They'd spent quite a bit of money on it, more than $500 million. They saw what I had done in the UK, so they said, well, we think Leo is the right guy to build a business in Iraq. Fundamentally different though, because like I said, in the UK everything is severely regulated. You've got a very rich supply chain around you. People are holding your hand. You need to do this, this and this to be able to operate here. Iraq, Kurdistan region of Iraq, there's no infrastructure. There's no people. There's no contractors. The governance is in 3 layers. They're not talking to each other. So what country government wants, it's very different than what regional government wants. Plus the fact that everyone owns an AK-47 in the block. So the relations you build up as an operator within not developed area is critical to the success of a business. We were on track. So we were a year and a half in, spent another $500 million on getting the project to first oil. And then July 2014, ISIS walked in. And you remember that Obama at some stage said, we can't be watching, the world can't be watching to see these people on Sinjar Mountain suffer, the Yazidis. And that's when the coalition stepped in, and that's when all hell broke loose. Then refugees started going everywhere. We couldn't reach our block anymore. So very quickly we had to decide, well, now's the time to evacuate. We had 2 evacuation routes, one through Turkey and one through the Erbil airport. And within a day we had all 100 people in a safe location in Abu Dhabi, working from an office in Abu Dhabi. A month later we moved back in, gradually. So first make sure that the field operations continued, maintain relationships, and then we revised the strategy because there was a material adverse change. Yeah. Very exciting project.
Thank you.
And I'm glad to say it's coming on stream this year.
Leo, following on from that, how do you see the environment in Trinidad, contrasting what you've experienced in the past?
In Trinidad we'll have different challenges. Like I said, it's day one, but it's all about building up relationships, being true to your values, shaking hands, creating networks, because these guys have been doing this for a long time. So you should not be so arrogant to step in, well, we're from the UK, we know better, so we're going to tell you how to do this. That's not how it works. So there's a lot of institutional knowledge in the people in Trinidad operating these fields. You need to complement that with structure. So what Stuart was talking about, if you go through what the opportunities are, let the people, the operators, current operators, think with you. A good example I'll tell you about later. Then I believe you can already get incremental barrels without doing anything. And that example, when we started the UK, TACA did the Big Shell ExxonMobil acquisition, so we bought those 4 platforms, Cormorant Alpha, Tern, Eider, and North Cormorant, plus the whole Brent system. So we were producing all of the Brent crude in the UK. The moment we took over in December 2008, the fields were producing 20,000 barrels per day. By going offshore, by speaking to the people, by giving them a vision and a strategy, 2 or 3 months later, we already added 10,000 barrels. Just hearts and minds of people. Just because these operators, they know exactly which pump to kick where to get the extra barrel, which valve to open. It is. So you need to be open to that type of opportunities and also be true to what you say.
Yeah, and Andrew Monk is very keen on Cedros, and I just wondered if you could tell us what your plans are now for possibility of deep drilling on Cedros, bearing in mind that we've paid Bolt over £1 million or over $1 million for the opportunities there, which is a lot of money for the shareholders, and I'm just interested to know how you intend maximising the value.
The Southwest Peninsula is core to our strategy. This is my day one, so I still need to get up to speed with all the exact numbers, because £1 million strikes me as a lot. Well,
that's we've contracted to pay that for Bolt.
Yeah. Maybe Neil can comment on that later. But the vision for the Southwest Peninsula is that there's 2 elements. One is, as Stuart mentioned, that is the ability to get that field from 30 barrels to 200, 300 barrels. That would pay for the investment. But more importantly, what's below there? I not only want to be focused on producing tomorrow's oil, I want to be focused on producing oil which we can really make money on in 3 years. So by being involved in that area, by becoming a responsible operator, we are opening opportunities to ourselves which aren't there yet. So how much value, how much bang for your buck, I'm only going to be able to tell you in 3 years' time.
Okay.
Leo, we'll take a couple of questions from the web on the webcast. The first one I think is quite an important question, and it is that whether your focus is anywhere else, or are you going to be? Is it the majority of your time, or 100%, or even is going to be focused on Columbus going forward? I know you have an exec role with Sterling, but can you just touch on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm an executive chairman, so most of my time is going to be on Columbus. I've got a non-executive position in Sterling Energy, for which I'm contracted to do 3 days a month, and I've got an interest in MENA Gulf Investment Partners, but that's also a non-executive role, which only takes less than 1 day a month. So I'd say 99% of my time is spent on Columbus.
Great. Second one is on Spain.
Yeah.
Is Columbus are they remaining committed to Spain, and do you have much hope for the Aluengo field?
Spain is. I'm still reviewing this. Again, this is day one of me being on payroll. From what I see now, it is a drag on resources, and I would like to resolve that as quick as possible. Sorry, Neil.
Neil Ritson here. The camera can't see me, but Leo's asked me to shepherd Spain for the foreseeable future. I'm going with Stuart to Trinidad next week to introduce him to our team there and to all the government and other stakeholders. I will stay involved to the extent necessary to maintain those relationships. But Spain is an outlier. It's not part of the future that the company sees, but we hold some value there that we need to recover. And Leo's asked if I will stay on to do that, and I'm very happy to do so.
Thanks, Neil.
Yeah, I actually have an interest in Sterling Energy, and I know that they have huge resources which they have been attempting to deploy for 2 or 3 years, and we're talking about maybe 20 million, is it, Leo? I think, and they seem to be looking for opportunities. So, do you see any possibility that they might be moving some money in our direction? Because we obviously need capital to in our group to deploy these other resources.
I'm looking at my nomad. She's going to strangle me if I confirm or deny that. Exactly. So we're not here to talk about Sterling. It's Columbus. Sterling is a very different business with a very different shareholder base. Equally an interesting opportunity.
Obviously, today's RNS was probably a surprise to most people, including myself.
I hope a positive surprise.
Absolutely. As a long-suffering, naive, stupid shareholder who's lost too much money on this, I'm hopeful seeing your engagement with the business. And genuinely, I hope you've come on for all the positive reasons that you've said. I think you mentioned, though, that you want to...
Can I interrupt?
Yes.
I can't do it alone.
So I was going to come on to that.
No,
I was going to come on to that. You mentioned trust. I think the trust that the company had with the private shareholders that it's got is probably shot to bits. You mentioned as well about further capital raisings you see as increasing value, and I hope that's right. But I think you can't do it alone.
No.
And I think in the corporate world now, too few people fall on their sword. I'd hope to see further change in this company going forward. in the management, because if you want to create something along the lines that you're presenting, I see you're not the only person that can deliver that, and I see the existing management team they've had some challenges, no question, but I think many of the decisions that have been made, many of the RNSs, the announcements, all of that have been woeful in how they've been constructed, their timing, and retrospectively now, when you look at much of what's been done, you are yourself questioning some of the things that you're seeing. There are management here today that were round the boardroom table when those decisions were made. I would hope to see fundamental change going forward other than just your engagement in the business. Now, I don't know if you've got any views on that, and you probably haven't yet, but as a shareholder, I would like to see further change, no question about it.
Well, thank you for your feedback. So that's certainly you'll take that on board. For me, this is day one. I'm going to be looking at the future. I've got my vision. I know what I want to deliver in 3 years' time, and over the period, there'll be additions to the board, and there'll be additions to the management team, and the other way, as in any other business. So I'm going to take my time, do the right thing, and make sure that the right team is in place to deliver the opportunities. And David's going to help me.
Leo, we'll take another question from the webcast. Is the Mayaro infill program a priority for Columbus? There's been one question on that and another question which is essentially the same, but this is in light of you saying that there'll be an imminent assessment on current operations. Again, another gentleman wanted to know whether the infill program remains a priority for the company.
I think we've tried to explain that we believe there are better opportunities to build production and to build value than to continue on the current drilling program. Yes, drilling will be part of the portfolio, but it's not the most value accretive thing we can do now. So we're going to take time, take stock, review the portfolio, and already start implementing low-level stuff. Pump of controllers, which are going to make sure that the pumps always run at the maximum lifting capacity. Very simple stuff, but that can add material barrels to our present production.
Any other questions? Do feel free. I'm sure, Leo, you're happy to hang around a little bit. Come and have a cup of coffee out here. Chocolate biscuit. Don't often VSA offer chocolate biscuits, so it's a special day. But it is a special day. And I think also just taking the analogy, where Leo showed how he started in Aberdeen in an attic, in a small room with a few people. I hope that these investor briefings are the same. We've started in what is a relatively small room. I apologise, it's slightly packed. But I hope in the same sort of time, like 3 years, we might not have 500 at the investor briefing as you had in your staff, but I'm sure we'll be able to move to bigger and better places to do this investor briefing with a lot more people coming along and a lot more excitement. But thank you for coming along. Do stay and ask, not just Leo, but some of the other management team questions. You can do it on a one-to-one basis. But Leo, thank you very much. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you for being here.